Welcome, everyone. We have Chris Reitz with us today. He's a lecturer at Columbia University and a leader in AI strategy and innovation. I met him a few months back, and since then, I've been interested about this talk. Chris is passionate about using technology to make a real impact in healthcare and education. And he's all about combining systems thinking, empathy, and collaboration to shape the future of leadership. And he's a really nice guy, as you guys will get a sense for as he starts taking over. So, Chris, my mic is yours. Please, all over to you.
Thank you, Manan. Thank you, Saima, too. You guys have been great partners, and I love what you're doing with Tintash and CPTO Fracts, etc. I will share my screen, and I have to talk really fast. Yeah, thank you for the warm introduction. I'm going to talk to you today about responsible cognitive offloading with AI. This is a hot topic right now, and why it matters is the same reason that responsible AI matters. And it's one word, it's trust. We have this incredibly powerful and unprecedented access to cognition on demand. And if we can't use it in ways that give us expected results, then either we're not going to engage it or the outcomes are very uncertain. So that's just some grounding. Manan was gave me a generous introduction. What I'll share really briefly is that there's three things to know about me. One was already shared. I'm a lecturer at Columbia University. I've actually been teaching at Columbia over 10 years. And prior to that, I was a student for 2 years. The Information and Knowledge Strategy program, I highly recommend. It actually turned out to be a great precursor to AI. A lot of the topics that we talk about, and it's very well balanced between some technical and business topics that you'd expect from graduate school and EQ, collaboration, social kinds of topics. That's the first thing. Second thing is my work is partnering with executives and teams to adopt AI and get it integrated into the flow of people's work. The third thing is that I was really fortunate. I had very early exposure to AI over 20 years ago as an undergraduate computer science student. And I just kind of stayed on that course, kept listening to that signal. And here I am. It's kind of everything I do now touches AI, which is, I'm sure, the case for most, if not all of us here. And then one last thing, my claim to fame is I've trained over 15,000 people on AI to date. A lot of that was done working for a large health insurance payer. So easy to get to scale that way, but I'm continuing down this path of speaking and teaching, something I'm really passionate about. And I have to confide that when I first encountered AI, I thought it was like a party trick in terms of I was just a little bit skeptical. I was like, okay, so this thing can like create a custom poem. To what end? How's this applicable in business? Well, I have to admit I was wrong. Um, Generative AI existed as a kind of a research discipline prior to OpenAI launching ChatGPT. And at its most basic, it's just doing fluency over words. So it's mastered all of this data that is human language and the ability to kind of statistically predict the next word. So it can handle a word problem like if you have the concept of a king and you minus, subtract man and add woman, that is a queen. Pretty straightforward. So like logic problems and things like that, I was like, yeah, so what? Well, it turns out I was wrong. Um, and the breakthrough for generative AI was that the number of parameters was accelerated to now be in the trillions, multi-trillion parameters that these models are trained on. So it's basically like how deep across many disciplines um, can these is the depth of knowledge that's accessible by these large language models. So that was the breakthrough, that like massive processing power, massive data pushed into there, and having it, giving it the ability to think across all these domains and access, all this content. That was the breakthrough. And that gave us the functionality we enjoy today. But the thing is, LLMs don't actually think like we humans do. They don't reason or reflect or anticipate things that we kind of come by very naturally. And so they can help us think through complex problems, but they're dependent on our prompts and our framing and contexts. And the reality is that true intelligence, raise your hand if you're a parent. It's a lot of us. So you might kind of identify seeing the world through your child's eyes, for example, that their experience of intelligence is very grounded in the real world. They get more through their senses than through just reading text, which is basically how we train LLMs. So, what they see, touch, hear, smell, etc., gives them much richer understanding. And the reality is that the world is very dynamic, it's rich and unpredictable. And so it's hard to model with a pure algorithm. Yet we can develop intuitions and heuristics, shortcuts, mental shortcuts that we take just through our experience in the world. And so it kind of begs the question, like, okay, predicting the next word, like how far can that actually take us in the real world? And sorry, my animations, I'm just having to switch back and forth to screens, make sure it advances. Okay. So the fact is that we don't yet understand how these generative AI tools like ChatGPT, how are they changing our ability to think and reason? And what does this mean for learning? It remains to be seen. There's a relatively famous MIT paper that puts forward the idea of cognitive debt. It's basically like, are we declining by relying on these algorithms and tools a little bit too much? And you might think of this as like cognitive atrophy, like you're not using the muscle that is your brain, and so it gets weaker over time. Well, I acknowledge that that is a point of view, but I'm gonna share a more optimistic view here, and it's that we should be using cognitive offloading to free up bandwidth in order to do other things. And so simple examples of this, writing things down in a notebook because memory fails, using a calculator because you want to save a little bit of time. I would even go so far as to say, if you've ever used Wikipedia, you've done cognitive offloading, unless, of course, you went and verified every single source that was linked throughout that article. So these things have we do these for good reason. They accelerate our cognition and so on. So I want to give you one other quick analogy, and then I'll kind of get to, I'll give you the punchline. It's that think about if you're 40 or older, approximately, you have probably experienced having to navigate without using a GPS. And that's a different skill set than maybe someone learning to drive today is enjoying or is cultivating. Because today you pull out your phone, you type in the destination, and that can help you. It's a nice shortcut. You know when you're going to get to where you're going, get there on time, etc. But take away Google Maps and think about the before and after. Have we lost any ability generationally? I mean, that's a very short time span, the last 20 years. I don't know, but just by way of analogy, that same thing could be happening to the way we explore a new topic or solve a problem because we're offloading to ChatGPT. So that begs the question, are we using AI as a shortcut, or could it be positioned to scaffold our thinking? Yes, we have the opportunity to like have Chat or Claude or Gemini or whatever do a first draft. It's a great brainstorming partner. And then ideally, that elevates us to do more strategic thinking or to be a little bit more creative. But there's a threshold. And it's very personalized, but like at some point, that drops off and we're just doing too much. We're giving too much to algorithms to do for it. So I would caution against using it as a shortcut. It's more of a scaffolding because we need to maintain the understanding piece because we're humans and, keeps us sharp and valuable. All right, here's kind of the punchline. And it was hard to narrow this to 5. And I won't read these to you, but the idea here is that we need to make sure that we're offloading what we're comfortable offloading and retaining and redeploying the capacity that we free up. That's kind of the punchline here. And what that should look like is that we're doing more of the synthesis. We're using our judgment so that it stays sharp and ideally gets more calibrated over time. But then there's also these very human things of storytelling, thinking of analogies. AI can do this for us, but I would tend to use it more as a test. Like, hey, it seems like the GPS analogy. Like, is this like GPS? In what ways? How is it not like GPS? Those are prompts that I would tend to turn over to, generative AI or an LLM. And so all of this points to, are we, LLMs bring to us this surface level fluency. It's not deep understanding necessarily. In fact, that could even be a separate field of AI. Instead, are we retaining our ability to understand? And are we using AI in a way that accelerates our acquisition of wisdom? I think for me, that's the ultimate. Are we getting smarter over time? And a great benefit to this is that it's broadening our access to knowledge, as well as customizing or allowing us to customize how we're encountering the knowledge. So whatever curiosity you bring into the world, you have this new partner to kind of explore it with. So again, I promised I wouldn't read these to you, and I know we want to really quickly move to the discussion piece, but I would just paraphrase this slide. Feel free to take a screenshot. It's recorded. You can get back to this, but be intentional about what you offload. Use it as a support or an adjunct to your thinking. Know where your expertise lies, because that's really important. That makes you unique. Stay an active partner. Don't just passively, what's the word? Delegate. So that requires attention as you're automating. And I love this 4th one, which is it's less of an oracle, like the all-knowing thing that you can just like bring your questions to, and more like a collection of binoculars. So depending on what binocular you pick up, that will determine the range and the kind of like sharpness or fidelity of the image in this analogy. But you could also have maybe different filters, like I want to filter out red light, blue light, etc. That's a nice analogy. And then this idea of red team, poke holes in what you get back from AI. Be that healthy skeptic. Ask it what's wrong, what's missing, what could be better. All right, so just wrapping up here, I submit to you that intuition is not something you download, it's something you earn over time. And finally, sorry, I went too far on the slides. This is my last slide. You should own the final synthesis. Retain that ownership of your final product. That's really critical. This is not anything new. You've heard this elsewhere, but that's a critical piece because you're ensuring that you're connecting what you're getting out of AI back with what your original goal was. So it's not a copy and paste. Synthesize it with what you believe or what you see in the world. That's it for me. Thank you so much. And I look forward to discussing, challenge any of these ideas. Really excited to see all of you here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was great. If you can please stop sharing your screen. And with that, we're open to Q&A. Will, thank you so much for turning the camera on. You're the healthiest skeptic I know, or the person with the healthiest skepticism about AI, and I've seen how consistent you have been since a while, and questioning that this is not going to help. And I've seen a lot of people be very optimistic about it, and I've come to realize Will was right. And we did our own research, and we have some fun conclusions from that my co-founder shared. But just thought, do you have the first question for?
I'm happy to throw one out. So I've been through a bunch of AI enabled, basically interview processes for people coming onto software engineering teams. And then, I know how LLMs work. I've read the fundamental CS papers. You can assume that, so the primary question that I have is, can you talk a little bit more about using AI for framing the thinking process? One of the challenges that I've seen from a lot of folks is that they basically hand over the that framing, the question of the outer problem space to the AI, and it goes off the rails in some random direction, and they get completely stuck. But what I've seen be very, very effective in a software engineering context is for the software engineer themselves to hold on to the broader framing and use the AI as an accelerant for very, very narrow script prescribed tasks. And I want to know what you're seeing in other fields because I think to some degree software engineering is quite unique in what it demands of us. And so I'd love to hear more about where are you seeing that using the AI for framing being helpful, and how does that actually work in practice?
I love that, Will. And I work with a lot of software engineers, so I relate to that. What I'll say here is I think the point you're making, or the point that's kind of inferred or encapsulated, goes to the scaffolding idea. It's that instead of by just turning over a question, or by framing things too broadly, you're sort of directing the LLM you're giving it the roadmap, like here's the end state. And I think we've all heard that these models are tuned. It's called temperature, but they're allowed to hallucinate. They're kind of stumbling forward into an answer, and they're wired, they're kind of conceived to be pleasing, meaning like they want to give us an answer that we're going to like. So I get your point. Like, I think that's very effective to hold back. This is the answer that I'm going to be happy with, and instead, and I'll try to land this with a more tangible example, but instead, explore the contours. So, and I think that's a really good tip. Instead of just saying like, here's the space that I want to know about, and then it just gives you the very basic things. Find where there are conditional truths, or find where the thresholds exist after which the meaning sort of changes, or that kind of thing. Another way to do this is kind of outside in thinking, and it's you kind of asked your question this way. You're like, in engineering it's like this. How is it like? What does this mean in other fields? So I'm trying to think of a real world example on the fly, but I think a lot of times I will I'll bring in a mental model from outside. It might just be for teaching or something, just trying to explain a concept, but introduce a mental model from elsewhere that feels resonant to me, and have AI sort of help me articulate that. So I just defaulted to the teaching example, but I don't know if does that make sense, what I'm saying? Like, you're reaching outside of the thing you're explaining, bringing it in, and then AI can kind of like shape it for you.
So effectively using it as a reword or a writing assistant in that instance.
Kind of. I don't mean to delegate like the writing or explanation piece, but what I mean is like to test the idea, to test an outside idea, an outside perspective.
Hmm.
That's how I'm thinking about it. Hey,
All right.
Marcus.
I have a
questions.
number of comments and things and questions, but I just want to respond to that one. I'm a software engineer type, so I use it a lot for vibe coding, but I also write and I use chat and we should stop calling it AI. Well, we're talking about chatbots here. And there's not even LLMs. We're talking about chatbots because LLMs are just a narrow piece of the whole thing. So I use chatbots and I mostly use ChatGPT as my research assistant. And I've recently noticed that because when you use it as a research assistant, you keep iterating in the same context through question after question because you come up with an answer and then you say and you do a nuance and it starts to pick up my style of questioning, my style of phrasing things. And I think that's inherent in the semantic structure of these things that it will do that. And the result is that now I'm torn because in my most recent article that I'm trying to write, for example, big chunks of stuff that it produced sounded a lot like me. And I'm very tempted to just use it directly. And I'm struggling with, is that okay? Is it okay to just because it's kind of started mimicking my wording, my style, which again, if you're in a long context and interacting with it, you think about it, it's naturally going to do that. And so the phrasing it's coming up with when it tells me, or putting aside the fact that that's a wonderful nuanced idea, that's so insightful, putting aside all that garbage, when it actually expresses, its version of what I've just said, I could take that directly and it sounds a lot like me. So I do struggle with that, what the boundary is, when it's okay to say, yeah, that's really me writing that, even though it got produced by a generative model. So that's one thing. But another thing, I wanted to comment on a couple of other things that you said. One of the big problems is we're treating this as a unique phenomenon. A lot of what you described is basic critical thinking skills that you need to learn, and it's not just this tool. And I would love to see somebody look back at writing. The invention of writing was every bit as transformative as this will ever be. There's evidence to suggest that writing not only rewired the human brain, but actually caused it to shrink because we no longer had to carry the burden of oral traditions and all the oral information that was passed on. I would argue that writing was way more transformative than this is currently looking to be. And I'd love to see somebody do a study of that just for perspective. Because
Working on something
I
similar.
think it would diffuse a lot of the nonsense you're hearing, the panic, the knee-jerk reactions. This isn't the first time humanity has faced transformative technology shifts that have changed the way our brains work. It's not necessarily a bad thing either, but you have to learn how to use it.
I mean, it's a great point. Like I would even extend your writing example to the advent of the printing press, which helped
Certainly
language
extended that, yeah.
diffuse, but I think it also established a canon and it sort of narrowed human language, and said like, this is how we write. These are the words we use. And fast forward to AI, like, could that be happening at an extreme level? And to that end, I'm partnering with Invisible Technologies, which is the lab or one of the labs that OpenAI hired to train their GPT models. And we're proposing, it's at NeurIPS, which is Neurological Information Processing Systems, in December. We're proposing a divergence index, which says to what degree or how do we measure over time the degree to which human language gets narrowed, that we lose diversity of expression. And you can already see this happen. It's happened organically in advertising. Like most ads use just the same colors because they're pleasing. So suddenly, like, does artistic expression collapse to these are the only pleasing images that we can see? I don't know.
Just jumping
Music.
in here, I want to make sure we had a couple of more questions. Marcus, I believe you had one. Nitin, you have one. And okay, so I'm going to rush in questions now. Marcus, please go ahead.
I had more like comments. I think I often use the metaphor of a coach or a junior partner when I think of how I work with a chatbot or an LLM. If I'm not familiar with the domain, right, I think of it as a coach. I ask broad questions maybe get a frame, right? A sense of what is even going on, because I'm not even sure maybe what the questions to ask, and then narrow down in a dialogue over time. If you have a junior part, if I'm very familiar with the field, I think of it more as a junior partner. I may ask very concrete, very detailed questions or give instructions of what to do. When you're looking at domains where that is besides software, I think the legal domain is a great domain to think of this, where the scaffolding idea and finding a frame is important. The healthcare domain is another one. For me, thinking of him as coach or junior partner also solves this problem of attribution. So if it sounds like, if I work with a junior partner and I will take, maybe they prepare a report and my name will be on that report at the end, I may put the junior partner's name on there as well, right? And say, this is a paper or a report written by the two of us. And in this case, maybe we should increasingly put ChatGPT or Claude as this was my junior partner. Ideally, they write in my tone, and that's fine, right? And so why not use it? But acknowledge that came in this dialogue from them in part.
I love that, and I think transparency and trust are maybe shifting a little bit in front of our eyes, and as well as leadership more broadly. But I just wanted to say, Reid Hoffman published a book about a year ago, and he said written with ChatGPT or something to that effect. And I thought that was really interesting and bold. He wouldn't have had to disclose that, but he's signaling something, anybody can do this. That's what I took, at least. Yeah, I love it, Marcus.
Sorry, Nathan, over to you.
Yeah, so I had a couple of comments and just a personal experience from work and my own experience. But so the top one is I'm mentoring a team to add AI to their coding, right? And after the first pass at this, I got a comment from one of the junior developers that said, when I code, I make mistakes and I learn. But when I'm having AI do my coding, I'm not learning anything. Okay, I think that was a very cogent and a very poignant comment. But my response to him was, don't look at it as a coding robot. Look at it as a mentor and ask, why did you make these architectural decisions? Can you explain what this line means? And then a light bulb went off and he said, oh, so it's all in the prompting. I said, yes. And then the guy was so excited, he went off and built an open source project and he put it on GitHub. And so, there is a certain barrier to entry that's mental, that people are afraid that it's going to take their job. People are afraid that this thing is going to make me obsolete. So the line that I found that I keep repeating is that it's not that AI is going to take your job, but it's someone who uses AI that's going to take your job. And that's, I think, really the transition that's happening in industry is there are people who are scared of AI, and there are people who are just jumping in and saying, this is fantastic, I want to use it as much as I can. And in my own personal experience, I've had so many projects that they're always in the backlog of my mind, and I've been able to just over weekends implement them just by using Cloud Code. And one especially was a startup that I had to put aside because I ran out of money and I didn't have a mobile developer. And with Cloud Code, I was able to build a mobile app over a weekend that puts me back in uh, uh, using that and moving it forward. So there are, and then talking about research assistants, now I'm actually writing a research assistant that helps me brainstorm an idea, goes out and looks what papers have been published in the area, identifies what are the main concepts, and I tell it to just really rip my idea apart because I want it to become better, right? And so I say, just be brutal and find all of the flaws in this idea. And then we go back and forth and it pushes back, but often I find that I can still distill the idea down to something useful. And so I'm thinking of both putting this research assistant out, but also the experience I've had as a paper itself is like, how do I use a research assistant? And there is a specific idea. It's too technical, but basically, if you have a knowledge base, is our most knowledge bases like trees? And if they are like trees, then can we use some special embedding for trees to tackle all knowledge bases? And so I was really able to drill down and create a mathematical model for it by going back and forth. So that's the other side of it. And the third thing is, I find myself getting lazy when I'm using it. And that's the part that, when there's a small change to be made in the code, I'm like, okay, just go ahead and do it. Although I could do it myself, but it's like I'm now a complete meta coder. That I'm just, I've become a micromanaging product manager. That's what I've become. So just the comments about, and this is all through Cloud Code. So all of this is Cloud Code.
Nitin, Chris, thank you so much. Sorry, I guess we have to.
Oh no, all good.
And it seems like communication and ability to communicate, perhaps we'll be learning more about that as we keep working with these GPTs. Chris, thank you so much. Everyone.
Thank you for the